There are new questions being raised as U.S. troops get ready for a total withdrawal from Afghanistan, which is possible by the end of this year. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel saying today it could potentially hurt confidence among Afghan security forces. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, also expressing concerns about the future in that country after President Obama ordered preparations in response to Hamid Karzai's refusal to sign a security agreement. I want to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. And, sir, welcome back here to America's Newsroom. And good morning. General Dempsey said this today. It is having an effect on the enemy, and in some ways, I think, encourages them, and intelligence supports that. So then, is the president negotiating publicly with Karzai to any effect?
Well, no. I think the last phone call to Karzai this week was really to cover Obama's political flank. Remember, he was criticized for not trying hard enough to get a status of forces agreement with al-Maliki in Iraq. And he's making sure this time he's got the phone logs that show, well, you know, I called Karzai, just couldn't get a deal, but, oh, I gave the old college try. Now, that said, if we are out of Afghanistan by the end of this year, we need to avoid this client-itis. It's not going to be a tragedy for the United States. Iran, Ukraine, Syria, Iraq all matter a lot more than Afghanistan. The tragedy for us in Afghanistan, Bill, was that after we did the right thing in 2001 and go out and we just pounded the hell out of al-Qaeda and the Taliban, we then decided to stay and try to remake a tribal culture in our own image. It was doomed from the start. So while I would prefer to see a residual force of 8,000 to 12,000 for counterterrorism and training, if Karzai and his paladins, who are increasingly Iranian-backed, launch us out by the end of the year, well, that tells me no more American casualties. So I say sayonara, dude.
Really?
Yeah. Really.
You're okay with that?
Well, you know, you've got to be realistic. I mean, what are we going to do? If the Afghan government won't sign a status of forces agreement, do we stage a military coup to stay? Do we get rid of Karzai ourselves? Now, I wouldn't mind if somebody else staged a coup, but it's not for us. And again, there would be penalties for us leaving Afghanistan, but not nearly so great as losses elsewhere. Again, I say what's going on in Ukraine right now matters far more to the future of Eurasia than Afghanistan does. And so I feel, and I've felt for a long time, that, you know, you got to hammer the enemy. And the British learned early on in Afghanistan, the policy is butcher and bolt. When they attack you, when they hurt you, they kill your people, you go whack them, and then they're quiet for 10 or 20 years. But you cannot, no matter how many hundreds of billions of dollars you spend, no matter how many American lives you sacrificed, how many troops are maimed, you cannot reform a culture that's perfectly content to live in squalor, corruption, and pederasty. And by the way, the Taliban will fight for what they believe. And if the Afghans we spent tens of billions of dollars equipping and training, if they won't fight for the Afghan government in Kabul, then that should tell you something. You
know, we brought you on to talk about Afghanistan. Twice you've drifted into Ukraine. I would be remiss not to ask you why. If Putin were to win, or if Ukraine gets split into East and West, how much of that hurts our geopolitical strategy?
Bill, you just look at a map. If he is able to gobble up all or just half of Ukraine, which he might settle for half, it just changes the geopolitical landscape. It does reignite something like the Cold War. Putin senses that we're weak. And what I'm hearing here in Washington, all these people are talking logically and say, well, it doesn't make sense for him to go in militarily. He'd lose too much. Putin doesn't operate on our logic. He's emotional, he's vindictive, he's vengeful, he's hateful, and he is now humiliated and embarrassed by events in Ukraine.
Okay.
And he wants to reestablish not the Soviet, but the empire of the Tsar.
This is something we will continue to talk about. Thank you, Colonel. Ralph Peters out of Washington today.
You.
Good to have you back. Martha.